Dawn and I are going to talk about sexual abuse at this point in time.
We got a little video to show. This is to lighten the mood a little bit.
Ready? Yeah. Does anybody here know the sex offender shelter? Because you're going to find out after this.
As a resident of Miami-Dade County, it is your right to know the names and likenesses of sex offenders living in your area. As a public service, we have created this videotape so that you and your friends and family can stay aware, stay safe, and maybe even have a little fun. Enjoy.
State of Florida has asked us to disclose our sexual crimes to you. We were bad, but now we're good. We're moving into your neighborhood. You know we're trying our best to be functioning members of society. We're not here to start no trouble. We're leaving here to fight for the sex offender shuffle. I'm Larry Arthauer, and I'll refrain from touching my neighbor's kids again. What I did was not too kind, but I'm a nice guy, you'll come to find. I've got a backyard and a real nice pool. Y'all should come over for a barbecue. We can make some cold drinks in my blender, but do keep in mind that I'm a sex offender.
Vernon Douglas is my name. My battery arrest is what brought me fame. But there's much more to know about me. I love to dance and I love to ski. I zip and zoom on through the snow. Just strap on my boots and watch me go. But I can't ski until December. Till then I'm just a sex offender.
I'm Charles Dolan, dropping rhymes. I've been arrested 7 times. I know that sounds like a lot. 3 of those times were for vandalism. Feel real bad, I got caught. Might do it again, probably not. I'm not here to make pretenses. I'm here because of my sex offenses.
I'm Sam Pound, I'm number 1. Apologizing for what I've done. In case you were wondering what that was, I snuck into a bathroom and I was eat no truffles. I'm just here to do the sex offender shuffle.
Hey everybody, I'm Laura Hughes, proving girls can do it too. And by it, I mean touch your cousin. Was it worth it? No, it wasn't. You won't find me in your child's playset, cause I gotta wear this ankle bracelet. I'm not here to go on a bender, I'm here because I'm a sex offender.
Last name Bermholt, first name Mark. I'm moving in somewhere on your block. Not in a house, but in a van. If you need me to move it, I sure can. The last thing I want is any trouble. I've learned my lesson from the sex offender shuffle.
I'm the one they call Arthur Chase. They said I didn't have to show my face. My first trial ended in a hung jury. If I'm found guilty, they'll unblur me. I'm not the necrophiliac Arthur Chase. That's a different Arthur Chase. I'm not here to be my own defender. I'm here because I'm possibly a sex offender.
Okay, real quick, I'm not like these people. Okay, this is an extortion plot by my ex-wife, who's the only witness, and she's trying to take away my kids. And I'm not here to pack myself full, I'm just here to do the sex offender show.
State of Florida has asked us to disclose our sexual crimes to you. We were bad, but now we're good. We're moving into your neighborhood. We're obliged to admit the crimes for which we were convicted. We're not here to start no trouble. We're leaving here to fight for the sex offender shuffle.
Okay. Oops, no. There we go. Okay. So this is actually, we know a lot of you might just take the beginning of a sex abuse case, but the most important thing, well, there's a lot of important things, but one thing we really want to make sure is if you're talking to victims or their families, tell them, while the instinct might be to go kill someone or beat the shit out of them or all the things they want to say, we got to keep it on the down low before, I mean, that's the wrong term, I shouldn't use that right now. But we don't, we really need, this is a. It's not illegal. That's right. But, and it's really hard, and
She used to be a very nice girl.
anyway, so we want to encourage people not to talk about it, not to go confront the suspect. And it's hard, it's difficult if it's in a family situation, but we have to move fast on these cases. So that's why even if it's not a detective, sex crime detective who first gets these cases, you really need to remember some of these things.
As soon as dad or stepdad or who, so it's most of the time a male that really wants to go over and rearrange the guy's face, or at least call him up and tell him what he thinks about him. So it's just got to be stifled completely in the family, just to start with, because the family is just about the worst thing for trying to get a sex abuse case going.
And the great majority of our cases are familial, or good friends of the family or something like that. So yeah, emphasize secrecy, warn everybody, and just constantly this is a problem. So even if you warn them, it's not going to necessarily stop somebody, but try to emphasize how important it is. And I think sometimes when a police officer tells somebody something, sometimes they listen. I want to talk about seizing evidence. Just kind of curious what people think. And here's just some obvious ones about clothing and things. Anybody, bedding, diaries, computers, clothing, any other ideas of things you might want to seize? Oh yeah, Paez's blanket. Oh God. Yeah, and so Mr. Paez, he's raped up and down our county, and he molested and got convicted of molesting Wilma. And Warrington did a good job seizing everything, and he really is into anal sex, so those things were kind of gross. And but we had the blanket that had feces on it. We had clothing. Right on Tupac's. It was a comforter or a blanket of Tupac. But it was really, it corroborated what the victim had said, that he was always forcing anal on her. So it really helped to show that. So it was gross, but it really, it made a lot of sense, and I think it really helped us get the conviction. They didn't even really want to see it, but that's how a lot of this stuff is. It's, that's one of the things. It's really hard to talk to people about sex abuse sometimes. It's hard to talk to kids. We're sort of a society where that's like a private thing. We don't tend to spend a lot of time talking about sex in public, or, just even if you're out with friends, you don't, just in our society, it's not real common, but you have to feel comfortable, because when you're talking to people and they've been raped or molested, they don't need that extra shame that this is awkward for you. And for me, that's been something I've had to learn over the years, because I remember first I had a grand jury, and I was talking to this girl about sodomy, and I said, did you perform oral sex on this older guy? And she's like, what's oral sex? I'm like, oh my God. Did you give him a blowjob? Oh yeah. But you have to just kind of speak the speak and not be embarrassed, and not be surprised that little kids know more than you think they should. And it's just, you just have to be real comfortable with it, and that just makes them more comfortable. And I had a case recently that Walker did, actually, he was responding to a guy this kid that was suicidal. He's a young adult that was suicidal. And he found out that he had recently been yelling at his girlfriend. So he went and talked to the girlfriend, and she said, oh yeah, he just punched me, and she had like a black eye starting. And then he asked her about sex abuse. Oh yeah, and he raped me recently. So it was, just asking about it is really important when you're on these, because what we found out from working with the Harbor is that while we weren't asking those questions, the Harbor does, and they find out the great majority of people who've been abused in their home are also being raped. That's just another control thing. So just ask about it, even if they're not bringing it up, doesn't hurt to ask.
Absolutely.
Any other evidence you can think of, Ron, that's real? Should we talk about phones a little bit?
Yeah, let's do.
We have some of the best guys here right now who are great with searching phones. And the all the agencies getting together, get the Cellulite has been awesome, because it's made a lot of, found a lot of evidence in all sorts of cases, but for at least what I care most about really are the sex abuse cases. Got a lot of information. Well, in the Roden case, that was huge.
I'd say just about any felony prosecution case, you want to seize the phone. In the old days, because somebody would say, "Oh, I need my phone. Oh gosh, I can't make any phone calls. I got all of my business information on there." So, the nice police officer would say, "Okay, well, I guess we won't need the phone." You have to have the phone, and that's the most easy. That's one of the easiest things. As long as you can say there might be some evidence on the phone, because it's on the person usually, and so it's incident to arrest whenever you arrest them. You're going to need a search warrant unless you got valid consent to take a look at it. But don't underestimate how much evidence is on a phone, no matter what your crime is.
And victims, particularly teenage victims, I find well, probably all victims, are reluctant to tell you even some of the things that have happened. So sometimes if you get their phones too, you're going to see that they did send a picture of themselves nude to that older man or something, because they didn't want to get in trouble, they didn't want to talk about it. So and we've had, theft case, obviously drug cases. I've seen examples on trainings where they've been used for burglaries to show the different places that people went. Phones are just awesome and should be searched, but definitely in every sex abuse case. And
I'd say with most phones, you're going to seize them without a warrant. You're going to probably write a warrant for whatever the first item of business is to get into it, but you may then end up having to do a second warrant once you get in there and you see evidence of something else. Rich?
I heard the fishing game guys talking, they still masturbate wrong.
did I?
Well, they'd know, so... Thank you, Rich.
I was pleased they stuck around, so. Oh, so sorry, this is,
Well, some game cops were some of the authors of some of the search warrants that are some of the worst cases, too. And so it's not just detectives that write bad warrants. But anyways, it's sometimes bad facts make bad law when the guys are not seeing how broad something might be on their warrants. Anyway.
so the next topic is about interviews.
Of the victim.
Of the victim, yeah. And so sometimes, if it's a kid, we have the lighthouse here, but you do need to get some general statement and.
Just an initial disclosure.
Yeah. And everybody in this room can do that. You don't need to have a detective do that. But.
Well, don't lead them into it.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry. But, if someone's starting to disclose to you, I've seen situations where, oh, wait, stop, we don't want to do that. If someone's disclosing something, let them say, and then get the ball rolling.
The protocols for the lighthouse say there has to be an initial disclosure before they'll even schedule an appointment.
Don't do that.
What's that? Oh, you mean on Kelly?
14 years ago, don't do that.
Well, find out where the crime happened, first of all, because you got the wrong police agency involved. But
And then you're stuck with it for 30 years. Let's see, so older kids can give more, and older teenagers are not going to, 15 and older and adults are not going to go to the lighthouse unless they are, slow, have some cognitive issues, so.
And I'm trying to remember what the experts say. I think it's under 10 or under 8 or something is the ones we're really concerned about suggested in this. When a kid gets up to around 10, 12, they got a mind of their own. They're not going to get led down the primrose path. So it's really and they won't see any kids at the lighthouse under 3. And sometimes it's older. It depends on the kid's sophistication level. But
Yeah, but I did have a 4-year-old testify at trial. He tanked me, but he was confident enough to testify.
yeah, his dad was on trial.
Yeah. Hey, Daddy. That was a bad. But that same thing about feeling comfortable. So I went to a training, and so what they had me do is everybody paired off, so people can pair off in just twos. Just kind of find someone next to you right now. Just find a pal right next to you, 2s or 3s. So then, so what I want you to do is talk to that person. Everybody know everybody who they're sitting next to? Probably. Okay. So then, tell that person about your best sexual experience. Okay. So that was a joke. That's what they had us do. So the the whole point of the exercise was just to make us think that, so that's a little awkward, a little difficult. But what we're really asking someone to do is tell us about their worst sexual experience, and this is someone who doesn't know you probably at all. So just kind of think about your demeanor. But I really think one of the biggest things is trying to be calm and not be awkward yourself, so they don't feel like it's just such a shameful thing still in our society to be sexually abused. So they're already going to be feeling that. So if you can help them feel like, I've heard detectives say, I've heard all this before. There's nothing you could tell me that's going to shock me. I think that kind of is really helpful because then
They're not in any kind of trouble.
yeah, because we've had lots of victims who've been told they would go to jail. And you think, well, that's ridiculous. Why would they think, that they could go to jail? But that's what they've been told, and sometimes they believe it. So, yeah, let them know they're not in trouble. They didn't do anything wrong. Often, suspects get their victims to do stuff to them, like give them oral sex or take pictures of themselves and send it, or things where they really get them involved, or they give them money or candy or whatever to bribe them into doing this, and then that person feels even more guilty because they did something or they took money, and they just need to hear from you that that's all okay. That's just part of the grooming. That's kind of hard to read. Follow up later on severely traumatic crimes. Oh yeah, so some just like we all learned with a police-involved shooting that I think it's like we're supposed to wait 3 days. Is that to talk to the officers?
Depends on which protocol.
After getting but so just kind of that same theory is that there are going to be people who have been so traumatized that they might not be able to really give you much of a statement right away. So understand that they might need a little bit of time. And there's some great training out there on for us to educate on how trauma affects how people remember things and then also how they relate it. So there's and it's really like every training I've been to lately talks about that, and we even had an expert come up on Sturgill who talked about it. Hoover?
Have you ever had to stand, especially as a kid, to multiple lighthouse interviews, and how that help or hurt you later on? Where you're like, you didn't get what you want the first time, so you kept sending them back until you got it?
Yeah.
Or are you able to explain that this, they just weren't able to come out and talk about it at the time?
So we've had it a
I think
couple times.
multiple interviews are frowned upon to begin with, unless there's some articulable reason that the kid couldn't have said it the first time through. And there usually has to be a pretty significant time gap between the first and the second one to, allow for whatever additional stuff the kid might remember. So it's kind of frowned upon because that, for the very reason you say, is the defense attorney's going to say, you talked the kid into this.
And so we'll find out because I have a trial coming up in August or end of July, early August that happened. The victim first just disclosed that the guy came through her window and cuddled up against her in their bed, and then forced a kiss and tried to pull her legs apart. And I'm like, really? Just tried? Because, okay. And then later on, she did say that he performed oral sex on her, and so we had these 3 different. So we'll just see how it goes. So we aren't going to have to explain to the jury why she changed her statement. And I think she can explain why it was hard. It's hard for victims. They can say a little bit. They kind of see how you react and how their parents react. And
We should get that same trauma expert you had
Yeah.
on Sturgill.
I was just thinking that's a good idea.
So with that,
Yeah.
you kind of touched on what I was thinking of my question, but say you suspect there was abuse, you want a lighthouse, so they don't disclose, then they disclose later. Can you go back for another lighthouse forensic interview? Or?
Yeah, we can, and that happens. And it's just something we're going to have to deal with. And that's what Ron was saying. In Sturgill, we had a really good. She's a professor down in California. And she came up and talked about trauma, and so we can have we can get experts. We can. I had.
But we
Tyler
also have to
saying
go very slow on that because no telling who's been poking at that kid
Yeah.
when they got out of the lighthouse where they never disclosed, and then mom or some relative or whomever poked them too hard and they said a certain thing, and we just want to make sure that whenever the kid discloses, it's truthful and not just the product because of parents very agitated, disgusted, whatever they are, because parents can be the worst thing to have, the worst person to be involved in an investigation.
And we've definitely seen parents who, they said, oh, the one with the arsenic and the,
Oh, yeah, Van Domlin, the Van Domlin family, somebody may be APD here, but they were dealing with the Van Domlin family from up the hill for a couple of years.
and so she just kind of kept coming up with more fantastic thing. And then to the point where she brought a dead rat to our office to say that she used the same shampoo that they use, that she believed her husband had put arsenic in on their pet rat, and look, it killed their rat, and here's the rat. But she was, anyway. And one of the things that I've learned about the traumatic interviewing, or how to interview and to best deal with people who have experienced something traumatic, is talking about their senses and what they saw, what they smelled, what they heard, and not just the chronological order. Tell me what happened then what happened next. Make sure that the area where they're being interviewed is kind of a nice place. Like, you're always welcome to use our office. If you haven't been in the soft room there, right next to the victim services, but it's, though it does have windows, but it's pretty private and it's comfortable. And we also want to record, so, but we've used that room a lot, because you want to make the person feel comfortable, and I think get that FEDI training or something like it is helpful. Anything else on interviewing victims? Oops. Okay, so this is about pretext calls, and yeah, you can't really see that, but we can use a text. It doesn't just have to be a phone call. Text, there's just like an extra step. We have to show that, was that, yeah. But a lot of kids, that's all they do. My daughter will say, oh, I just talked to my dad, and so she meant she was on the texting him. I mean, they just, that's what a lot of kids do. They don't actually talk on the phone. Try to use the actual victim. You're going to have, you want to talk about parents saying that kids can't.
Sure. Parents almost will always say, no, my kid can't do that. When you tell them about the pretext and they got to call the guy and make some sort of a statement to try to get the guy talking, they'll almost always say, no, he can't do it. Push back hard on that, because it's way harder to lie to the victim on the phone than it is to lie to somebody else. And so they're probably, if you got the actual victim on there and they say something, are you going to do that to me anymore? That kind of thing. It is very difficult to stay cool, calm, and collected and lie with the victim herself saying that to you. If it's a parent, they don't know exactly how to couch the terms to catch the guy in the hand. So I found that 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds can make those calls, but you got to be sometimes a little bit more insistent that they need to do it, because we'll get a better end result. Occasionally it works with a mom or that type of thing, but it's very difficult because they're so angry. If they're so angry, they want to yell, they want to scream, and we don't want to hear the person making the pretext. We want to hear the suspect.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's out there that you probably can't read from. I can barely read it, but yeah, you want the person on the other end of the phone to be doing the talking. You want to prep the victim, and I just want to say while we're talking, I think Steve mentioned that it's good to do pretext in theft cases. I think they should be done in almost every domestic violence case if possible. I mean, there's so many cases where a pretext call could nail the suspect.
Domestic violence cases, I think, are ripe for it, because how many times does the perpetrator take off from the scene? Because the cops are called, I'm out of here. And they got a phone. So when the police officer gets there and figures out what's happened, once mom or the girlfriend or whoever the victim is settles down enough to be able to make a phone call, I mean, that's the time to strike while the iron's hot. The guy's going to be saying, no, don't tell the cops nothing. He's going to be trying to his level best to put words in the victim's mouth. And I don't know that I've ever actually seen one on a domestic, but I'd like to see that tried some more.
And it makes sense to try them on other cases first, like, something that's, because if you've never used the equipment, it can be a little, but I mean, game cases I think would be great,
Yeah. Pretext could be used in any kind of crime, any kind of crime at all.
And similarly, jail phone calls are awesome too, and I appreciate everybody who's ever listened to the jail phone call. We've got a case coming up that I've got some good information on, so they're not fun to listen to because you hear a lot of, it kind of kills your brain cells just listen to Aaron Dunn has gotten there. So we listened to hours of Aaron Dunn saying, fuck dog, what's up, dog? I mean, that's all he said was, it was like, oh God. But, they're really great. Go over themes and questions. So like on sex cases, you can say, oh, I'm worried I might be pregnant, or did you use a condom, or do you have a disease, or do I have a disease, I may end up giving it to you. I don't know. I'm really upset about this. I'm really depressed. I want to go talk to somebody. What should I say? Or even if they already know the police have been contacting you, the police are going to come talk to me. What should I tell them? I think that's one of my favorites.
That's why you want to use the victim, so because the victim can just say, "What do you want me to tell him?"
Okay. So here's one that yeah.
On your pretext, if I can add, think about your venue.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't going real well to begin with, but my victim lived out in the country, and we tried to use the pretext from the DA's office. And the Astoria Fire Department decided to go by code 3 to the fire department. So the suspect he knew it was bullshit, because why are there so many sirens going by your house? What's on fire? And so, just think of venue. I like to do it in my patrol car or my patrol vehicle, but turn my radio off. That'd be a bad thing. Or an interview room where you can just control the sound environment so that you don't have that background stuff moving away.
And you also got to know you have to know whether you got a one-party state or a two-party state. If it's an interstate phone call, we have a one-party consent state. Washington has two-party consent. We're surrounded basically by two-party consent states. I don't think we have any. California, Washington, Idaho are all two-party consent states. So you just have to be careful, because you can't go to Washington, for instance, and make a pretext phone call. If your victim lives in Washington, your victim is going to have to come across the state line, and then you can make the call into Washington or into one of those places, yet the call has to be initiated and have the consent of the person who's making it. So you might have to actually have your victim come from California, from Washington to Oregon to be able to legally make the one-party consent pretext.
And we've had some amazing pretext calls in sex abuse cases. Here's one. This is Mr. Keith Davis that helped coach my daughter's softball team. What's that? Yeah, I think so, if you don't mind. And he was a janitor first at Gerhardt Grade School, then Seaside Heights. Oh no. Well, it was Barnes' case. Oh, what a bummer. So, but it was great. 'Cause so Ruby, his daughter, went to the police station with her mom, and one of the things that Barnes did is wrote down. So you don't want to be whispering in their ear, what to say. But he was writing down questions asked and things as she was going along. And she said, when did it start? Because she actually didn't remember all of the abuse. She just knew it happened sometime. And she asked him when it started, and he said when they used to live in Warrenton. So we were able to prove it started when she was in kindergarten. She said, what exactly did you do? And so he admitted to performing oral sex on her. And and it was also, I think, cathartic for her, because she was able to, it was like, 25 minutes long or something? It was.
One of the tipping points from that one was, he was all apologetic, and then I had her start asking, well, am I still a virgin?
Yeah.
I want to know, I need to know that, and then that just.
Yeah. But she was then at the end able to, she.
What did he say?
Yes.
Yeah, because it was just horrible.
No.
And she also wanted to know if he had abused. She has two brothers. If he had abused them, and he said no. And his excuse was alcohol, I think. But he ended up going to prison for 25 years. It's awesome. It can be a lifetime post-prison. And, without that, there was no physical evidence. There was a weird thing, like on the school computer, there was a penis picture or something, but it couldn't be tied to him. So, it would have been a difficult case. I don't know. It just would have been a hard case. This made it, and he pled out within a few months, and it was great. And we've had plenty others, and usually they don't go to trial, but you had one where.
Oh, yeah, Barnett made it was with a veterinary student. With sex abuse cases, we can make, under the statute of limitations statute, we can go back on child sexual abuse as long as it happened when they were under 18, up until age 30. And at one time it was age 24, and Barnett got a hold of us like 2 weeks or a week or something like that before the victim turned 24, and she was in vet schools. I think she was just finishing. And it was her former stepdad that was the abuser, and the vet student called, and it was a long one. I mean, she finally had to break contact, and the guy was just confessing, oh, you've got my life in your hands. Oh, I did such awful things, and on and on and on. It was so amazing. I almost had a one-witness case where I just called her, played the tape, and then we were done. In fact, I only called Barnett just to ask him a couple more questions. It was the shortest case in chief I've ever seen, because the pretext had all the elements there, all of them. But it still went to trial, because I wouldn't give him a cakewalk, and he went to trial and got convicted.
And his family, it's interesting too on these cases that his family was supportive. His brother paid his bail.
His dad.
Or
His
dad.
dad's an attorney in somewhere over there in the valley.
It's just interesting, that the same people can listen to what we're listening to, and still, people don't want to believe that their relative could do
I
something
actually
like this.
played a pretext for Phil Nelson at that guy's bail hearing to get it jacked up. And after Phil heard the pretext, he jacked it up, and they still were able to post it.
And the one I was thinking about was actually the guy. I think he was the dad, and in court he went to trial, and he said, oh, he did say those things, but he was only sorry about. He just meant physical abuse. Yeah.
He tried to say, oh, I was just saying I wouldn't emotionally abuse you anymore. She asked, will you quit sexually abusing me? And he said, yes, he would. And so we played the whole thing, and he said, no, I thought she said she was emotionally abused. So then his wife came in, and I called her in on rebuttal, and she was the one that sunk his boat, because she said he got on the phone and started talking to somebody, and then he got off the phone and says, your daughter's accusing me of sexual abuse. And so.
Yeah. So, any questions about pretext call? Who has never done a pretext call? I haven't either, so there's a few.
We used to.
I bet there's more.
We didn't record them when I was in high school, but we used to do them all the time when I was a kid. You got pop in a bottle. You got Sir Walter Raleigh in a can.
Is your refrigerator running?
Yeah.
We did that one. Better go catch it.
Things were a little different in the 60s.
Yeah.
What was that?
I meant to bring over the SANE kit, but so you've all probably heard about SANE exams, but we've had some issues with there's not always a SANE nurse on hand. So Providence will bring him out from Portland to Seaside, but not immediately. If they're under 15, is that the right age? If they're under 15, they won't do them anywhere around here. So you have to drive them into Portland. And we've done that a few times. And by we, I mean the officer. I think Ben went one time with Humphrey. Randall's you got it, Dersham, maybe? Yeah. Did you take somebody? Yeah. We had a case of Dersham's where the boy was molested in the shower and went to go get a teenager, went to go get a SANE exam, and they sent him home. So, the evidence only sticks around for, 72 hours now. But they're really important, and I think if you have to drive someone to Portland, I would say drive someone to Portland. It's just, Seaside had one where the woman was drunk but cooperative, and the hospital said, come back, yeah. I guess there wasn't much to do at that time, but take them to another hospital. I feel like anything I can do, I'd be happy to show up there. Ron would too, I'm sure, or call.
Absolutely. I'm very, very disappointed in the two hospitals in this area, because they really don't reach out and really try to help the community much. And I hope somebody here is on a board somewhere, because I'd like to see them, both in terms of a rubber rooms type, holding cell type thing, as well as being more, especially on juvenile SANE exams. They're not interested.
Yeah.
They don't make money, so I guess they're not interested.
So part of the problem is that away from the person in the ER, and part of the problem is
Right. Right. That's true. And because part of their certification is that they come into our office, so we've met a few.
Yeah, we've
But
helped
they-
them try to get certified, so, yeah, but we
Yeah.
can't create business for them.
And on the same exams are, the crime lab said they're taking to 5 days now, past the initial.
5?
So it's like
Oh.
20 hours.
Great. I was wondering, yeah, great. So obviously the sooner the better. I mean, they do take a really long time. I think like about 5 hours, Joanne, do you know, like about 5 hours or something like that? Yeah, and it's, it's difficult for a victim, yeah.
So if you're taking it, the juvenile to the Portland area, you're going to be going to Randall's Children's Hospital at Emmanuel. They typically take less than 2 to 3 hours, depending on how busy they are.
Oh.
And they will retain the kid until the end of that person's shift, which I think is 6 or 7 in the morning if you're at night. They work 12. The important thing is they will only release that kid to the proper agency. Or I've never tried to have them release an OSP. I'm sure they would, but for chain of custody purposes,
Yeah.
they prefer to give it to the investigating agency. And I do know OSP lab will only accept kits from the agency investigating. I had a case where Marion County collected a kit on my behalf, tried to submit it to the lab, and it got rejected because it wasn't submitted.
Yeah, so they're,
My point is, I think it's worth just go with your victim to Portland.
Yeah.
You're making sure it's getting done, you're seeing that it's getting done right, and you're bringing your evidence back and you're chain of custody.
and you're doing a little bonding, so like Hoover and Chanel, I mean, she's going to feel comfortable now, even though she has to do this for the 3rd time. She knows him, and she knows that he cares about her welfare. So I think, in that sense, you can get time, so they'll be more comfortable because, like I said, these are really awkward and difficult things to talk about. So.
But this is the most critical time in these sex abuse investigations, getting some sort of physical evidence or pretext phone call.
That was all I had. People have, or is there anything else you want to say about that?
There was something I was going to ask, think about. Go ahead.
So does anybody have any questions? Just at any time, feel free to call. These are, you can't see them real well, but so Ron or myself, and dispatch has these numbers, but also I see Scott there. Any of us, if you can't get us, these are cases that are so important, and the evidence is so fleeting that anything we can do to help anytime, and we'd much rather hear about them before we come into work the next day and see it on the in custody.
And one thing I'd like to say, and you probably read it in my newsletters, is there's not any, the only time we want to make sure that that guy is off the street is when there's going to be, there's some belief that he's going to be able to abuse another kid or he's going to flee. Now, but the fleeing for me is the less significant of the two, because in this day and age it's pretty hard to, unless you go to Mexico or somewhere else, and you may not be ready to pull the trigger, because once you arrest the guy, that's when the 60 days starts getting counted, and that includes anything. That includes lab work that needs to be done. That includes just about anything. So you should be hesitant to make an arrest on a sex abuse case until you're ready to go forward with everything. But don't leave the guy out there if there's any chance that another kid can get sexually abused.
So I wish I had something funny to end with, but I don't.
Yeah, I'd try to do this. No, that's right. We're going to find. We'll just take a break.
Take a break.
Take 10.